Are you wondering how the threat of new entrants to the competitive landscape is affecting your business? This video is for you. In the previous video, we were introduced to Porter's 5 forces. You will recall that the objective of Porter's 5 forces is to identify the risks that are relevant to your business's specific set of circumstances and then score them from low to high. This presentation will look at the second of those forces, namely the threat of new entrants. In the videos that follow, we will consider each of the remaining forces one by one. Please be sure to watch them all in order to guarantee an overall understanding of Porter's 5 forces and how they affect your competitive landscape. With that, let's dive into the presentation. Previously, in video number 1, we were introduced to an overall strategic management framework, and more specifically, the first step in that framework, namely developing the strategy. Then, in video number 2, we focused in on the second part of that first step, namely strategic analysis. In video number 2, we identified 5 different techniques that would form part of our strategic analysis toolkit. This presentation will focus on the 4th technique, namely Porter's 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces comprise 1. Rivalry among existing competitors, 2. The threat of new entrants, 3. The bargaining power of buyers, 4. The bargaining power of suppliers, and 5. The threat of substitute products or services. In this presentation, we will look specifically at the second of these 5 forces, namely the threat of new entrants. New entrants can be considered from 2 separate perspectives, namely barriers to entry and expected retaliation. The first point to consider within barriers to entry is the supply side economies of scale. These arise when current industry organizations that produce at higher volumes 1. Achieve lower costs per unit because they can spread fixed costs over more units, 2. Employ better technology, and 3. Negotiate better terms from suppliers. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, our business school competitors have more resources and can generate new content at greater scale if they wish. In terms of online competitors, it will vary depending on their size. However, in terms of the SME niche, the risk may be limited. This is a medium level of risk. The next point to consider within barriers to entry is the demand side economies of scale. This is also known as network effects. The buyer's willingness to pay for an organization's product increases with the number of other buyers who also buy that product. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, if business schools compete for advertising revenue, their network effects could pose a strong challenge. However, this will require a significant change from their current student enrollment model. If established online players compete for advertising revenue, their network effects could also pose a strong challenge. Therefore, this risk is high. The next point to consider within barriers to entry is customer switching costs. These are the fixed costs that buyers face when they change suppliers. Examples include altering product specifications, modifying processes, modifying information systems, for example ERPs. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, consumers can easily consume alternative online content if they wish, at no cost. Lightweight finance will need to ensure their content quality excels and that they provide unique value. The risk is therefore high. The next point to consider within barriers to entry is capital requirements. The need to invest large financial resources in order to compete can deter new entrants. Examples include fixed facilities, extending customer credit, building inventories, funding startup losses, for example R&D or upfront advertising. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, online platforms and social media make having an online presence relatively affordable and easy. There is not much to deter competitors other than excessive execution. The risk is high. The next point to consider within barriers to entry is incumbency advantages, independent of size. Incumbents will likely have cost or quality advantages not available to potential rivals. Examples include proprietary technology, preferential access to the best raw material sources, favorable geographic locations, cumulative experience. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, both online and traditional incumbents can compete relatively easy in terms of quality and reputation. This is a medium level of risk. The next point to consider within barriers to entry is unequal access to distribution channels. New entrants will need to secure distribution channels for their products or services. The more limited the channels are, the tougher entry into the industry will be. For example, limited shelf space in a supermarket. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, there are numerous online channels available for distribution of content. However, the distinction will be between providers following an advertising revenue model versus providers following a fee-based revenue model. The majority are following a fee-based model and would need to change their model. Therefore, this risk is low. The next point to consider within barriers to entry is restrictive government policy. Government policy can hinder or aid new entry directly. Government policy can also amplify or nullify other entry barriers. Examples include licensing requirements, restrictions on foreign investment, patent rules, safety regulations, subsidies, taxes, tax incentives. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, taxes are a standard consideration. Online content that could impact children also needs to be considered. However, this risk is low. Moving on to expected retaliation, the first point to consider is previous responses. Have incumbents previously responded vigorously to new entrants? For example, in relation to lightweight finance, there are thousands of distributors of content online, and resistance to new entrants is weak. On that basis, lightweight finance could face new competitors in the future. Therefore, this risk is high. Next, within expected retaliation, we need to consider incumbent resources. Incumbents possess substantial resources to fight back, including excess cash, unused borrowing power, available productive capacity, clout with distribution channels, clout with customers. For example, in relation to lightweight finance, there are not many resources required to start an online channel providing content. Incumbents can mainly just fight back through developing better quality content. This is a medium level of risk. Next, within expected retaliation, we need to consider a price war. Incumbents seem willing to cut prices because 1. They are committed to retaining market share at all costs, or 2. The industry has high fixed costs, which create a strong motivation to drop prices to fill excess capacity. For example, lightweight finance will provide content for free. There is no potential of a price war. Therefore, this risk is low. And finally, within expected retaliation, we need to consider slow industry growth. Newcomers can gain volume only by taking it from incumbents. For example, lightweight finance is providing content that is tailored for SME owners and managers. There are thousands of SMEs globally, providing thousands of different goods and services. Therefore, this risk is low. After considering all these factors in relation to the threat of new entrants, we should consider how we will fight back. For example, as lightweight finance grows, it will need to invest heavily in R&D to produce higher volumes of content at higher levels of quality. Lightweight finance will need to develop complementary products over time. For example, SME targeted financial analysis and consulting services. And with that, we can prepare a scorecard for factors impacting the threat of new entrants, our second Porter force. Overall, in the case of lightweight finance, our scorecard has an average risk level of medium to high. This makes sense as we are entering an arena with very low barriers to entry. We should expect similar behavior from our competitors and thus recognize the quality of our content will be of utmost importance. And so, we have finalized our second of Porter's 5 forces. However, we will need to consider all the forces, as they interact with each other and are applied to our organization simultaneously. In this video, we considered the second of Porter's 5 forces, namely the threat of new entrants. This force identified numerous factors to consider in relation to both barriers to entry and expected retaliation. And so, we continue to add to our detailed analysis of competition as part of our overall strategic analysis. Remember, you should be methodically documenting your findings. They will all form part of your final strategic plan. In the next video, we will be moving on to Porter's third force, namely the bargaining power of buyers. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell. It helps us grow the channel and bring more content to small and medium business owners and managers. Also, be sure to check the description below for any related product affiliate links. And finally, please comment on the video or click on our community tab to further interactions and updates.